and welcome to episode 194 of the Filmmakers Podcast. I am Giles Alderson. I'm a writer, director, producer.
I am Robbie McCain, director, producer.
And this is our live episode from AFM that happened very recently with the amazing Dan Mazer, myself, and Ian Sharp, producer. And it was so good that we thought we'd share it with you.
So good. Yeah, I mean, for those people who were lucky enough to attend the AFM talks, you might have seen this already, but for those of you who weren't, they've allowed us to include this as part of our show as a special treat for you guys. So it's like you're there at the festival.
Oh my gosh, it was fascinating because everything was online with the festival anyway. But I just found it was our first time being asked to speak at AFM, and it was a real privilege and a real honour. And obviously to get Dan Mazer to join myself and Ian Sharp to talk about filmmaking was incredible. What an experience.
You are in for a treat because Dan talks all about how he's been able to move through the film world, the challenges he's faced, including, working with agencies and trying to convince cast to come on board for projects and how he's overcome those.
Absolutely. We also talk about film financing. Ian Sharp goes into detail about that, and we discuss the differences between indie films and studio films.
Dan talks about how his most recent project, the Home Alone remake, has been impacted by COVID-19, the sort of impacts of that versus the Borat subsequent Moviefilm, and the differences between how COVID can impact your production, if it's a studio or if it's an indie production. He also talks about how he got into the business, writing on the Ali G show, and then moving straight to Ali G Indahouse with working title.
And obviously, if you don't know by now, we are talking about the amazing Dan Mazer. As Robbie said, he did do Ali G. He has done Borat 1 and 2 as a writer and exec producer, and he's directed some amazing movies with some amazing people, of which you'll find out on the AFM talk. And that's all to come on this week's episode of the Filmmakers Podcast for you lovely, amazing people. Thank you so much for listening. We love you.
But Giles, where are you at the moment? Because you're not recording from your cozy kind of home office as you normally are. You are recording live from location, shooting your newest feature.
I am indeed. Thank you, Robbie. I've literally stepped off set. It's the first day today. It has been incredible. I am in Northampton. We are on the first day of The Stranger in Our Bed. People are packing up, moving around me. And it was a full-on crazy day, as you can imagine, for the first day. They always are. It's never easy.
Yeah, and with all of the COVID precautions and testing and social distancing, I imagine that kind of ramped up the craziness even more.
Well, it did, because everyone's got to arrive today, and we're in a manor house in the middle of Northampton, middle of nowhere, with very little Wi-Fi. And everyone's got to arrive here, try and find the location. Then we had to do an hour of COVID tests. I think the camera van was a little late, so we couldn't set up with that. So suddenly we're already behind, and because we've got a lot of day stuff to shoot, we're losing light at 3 o'clock. So suddenly, if you're not starting till 11, you're already losing part of your day. So luckily, I think I only lost 2 shots today, which we have to pick up another day because I need them. They're important. But I started off with a low loader, Robbie. If you don't know what a low loader is, people out there, it's basically a huge truck that you strap a car onto, and you're inside the truck with the camera either pointing into the window, on the side of the window, or you're doing a wide from inside the van itself. That's really difficult. On the first day, the first shot was on a low loader. It's like, what are we doing? Why did we choose to do that? Oh my gosh.
It's an icebreaker. Start you at the deep end. That's
Absolutely. Everyone jump in. Here we go. Feet first. Have your COVID test. You passed? Great. Let's get on set. Let's get going. But we got some great shots. I've got such an amazing cast that as soon as it's announced, I'll let you know who everyone is. And it's just been a really good day. It's been a bedding in day of getting to know each other. A lot of people I'd not worked with before. And I'm really pleased. I'm really impressed. I mean, we got some lovely tracking shots. We really stuck to what we wanted to get.
amazing.
And as much as it's always difficult, like I say, the first day, I'm really pleased. It's looking gorgeous.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man.
And yeah.
And
now we're all staying in the manor house here, and It's just going to be crazy for 2 weeks. 2 weeks here and then 2 weeks in London. So it's full on.
Wow.
Full on. I need a whiskey, Robbie. I need a whiskey and a Coke.
Get into character.
I'm dying for. I'm gonna have one as soon as we've done this. I should be having one now. Come on.
No, but seriously, well done, man. I mean, trying to do a film around this time is not easy, and especially trying to get exteriors done in the middle of November, close to the shortest day of the year, is not easy either. So well done.
Thank
for
you.
getting your first day done and only 2 shots missed. I mean,
know.
that you can make those
I know.
up.
I have no idea how we did that. Yeah, I'm really surprised, and I'm still a bit buzzy. I'm still a little bit like, oh my gosh, we're making a movie, and it's a great experience always to make a film on a film set. You're always learning.
Are we going to get some sort of on-set tour diaries maybe from you later on? Hopefully, if there's time.
Yes, I hope so. If there's time and it's not too crazy, I'll do some tour diaries for you. It might be on my phone, so the quality might not be amazing, but I'll try and do some for you. See what I can do.
Well, that would be super exciting.
I can't make any promises, Robbie.
Well,
can't make any promises. I'm trying to make a movie here.
Well, we're all here wishing you luck, and if anyone's out there who wants to support Giles, have a look on his Twitter. He's posting a few snippets, what he's allowed to reveal, so show your support there.
At Giles Olsen, by the way, if you didn't know, on Twitter. Look, honestly, if you do like this show, tell all your friends, go on iTunes, give us the 5-star review that we always like and need, and do write a review. It means the world to us. But really, more importantly, tell your friends, tell everyone about this podcast. We do it for the love. We do it because we want you to learn as much as we learn. So that's what it's about.
Absolutely. So we better get to today's episode, right?
Let's do it. I love the fact that this is live from set now, and then we're going live
to AFM.
Yeah. Even though technically it's not live, it was live at the time. And actually, we do some question and answers at the end from people who were there, who were asking questions.
And that's a really interesting section as well. There's some really good questions that get asked.
Yeah. So look forward to either hopefully hearing your name, or if not, just to some great questions for all you wonderful independent filmmakers that you are. Or if you just like to hear Dan Mazer talking about Borat and working with Sacha Baron Cohen, there is that too. So enjoy this week's episode, right, Robbie?
Enjoy.
Hey, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Janina. Really appreciate that. I am Giles Alderson. I'm a writer, director, and a producer. My recent films include The Dare and Arthur and Merlin. And joining us today is the fantastic Ian Sharp. He's exec producer and film financier who has made the films Kickoff, Pleasure Island, Legacy, Holston, A Northern Soul, and Westward. Hello, Ian.
Hello. Hey, good to be here. How are you guys doing? I hope you're well. I'm looking forward to getting into this.
Absolutely. And our very special guest today is the very talented director, producer, and writer, Dan Mazer. He's known for writing and producing the cult classic Borat movie. Dan has been a regular collaborator with Sacha Baron Cohen, producing and writing Bruno and Ali G Indahouse, as well as directing a wealth of other features, including I Give It a Year, Dirty Grandpa, and writing Bridget Jones' Baby and Office Christmas Party. His films have included the likes of Robert De Niro, Rose Byrne, Rafe Spall, and Renée Zellweger. He's currently directing, or has literally just wrapped directing, Home Alone. Dan Mazer.
Cool. That's a long resume. I should live in a bigger house.
You really should. I nearly got bored reading it.
It shows how old I am, basically. But
It does. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us, and thank you everyone for joining and listening today. Obviously, this is a Q&A chat as well, so we will be throwing it out. So if you do have any questions, and we like them, we like the sound of them, we will be asking, and we will try and answer them as best as we can. But obviously today we're talking about independent studio movies, what's happening right now in the world, making movies, working producer-director relationship, and on set as well. So obviously, we've just had that general rambling introduction from myself. So I thought I'd move it over to Dan for a little bit to just talk about, because he has just come off set making Home Alone, a fantastic reboot for 20th Century Fox. But you had to stop halfway through because of COVID. Do you want to just talk us through that and how that felt?
Making a movie, you sort of live in this hermetically sealed bubble where the rest of the world doesn't really matter for those 10 weeks or however long you're making a movie. But, everyone was talking about COVID and this and that and the other. And then there were just sort of rumblings. I was in the middle of a setup, in the middle of a take with Ellie Kemper. And the crew just started murmuring. And they'd read on Deadline that we were about to be shut down. And everyone was just like, what? We're what? And it was a Friday morning. And lo and behold, I finished the take. 30 seconds later, the producer came in and made the announcement, and we shut down without knowing when, if, how we would come back, having a $5 million set still standing in Montreal for all that time on having taken over 3 stages.
Yeah.
And also more pertinently, having a young lead, an 11-year-old boy as our lead, who, with the clock ticking on whether he was going to hit puberty during that we locked down. So, the nightmare scenario was he was going to come back with a beard and his, and his balls had dropped and his voice had gone down 3 octaves.
Frightening.
And we'd be in trouble. But, we just kept on looking, and the producers did brilliantly in kind of making sure that all the protocols were met and everything was safe for us to go back. And we went back at the beginning of September, and in a very different world, with everyone wearing masks and in different pods and in different bubbles. And, I was tested 5 times a week. Everybody was tested 3 or 4 times a week. It was just, we couldn't eat together. It was just a very different, slightly more miserable world and universe that we had to go back into to making the movie. But we got it done. We did it quicker than we thought we would. We managed to avoid, thankfully, any positives in a crew of probably, somebody told me there were kind of 650 people came in and out of the movie in the 6 weeks that we were shooting, and we managed to escape all of that. And bizarrely, it was kind of a weird bonding experience, even though you couldn't see anybody's face for the entire time. So I'm worried about going back to Montreal and being rude to people because I just won't recognize them. Just didn't see their mouths for that.
Yeah, well, that's it. It's just eyes, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just eyes. So it was weird. I thought it was going to be impossible, and there were going to be loads of completely draconian restrictions that made creativity absolutely kind of forbidden. But I think it didn't really impact the creative aspects of making the film too much.
That's good.
Yeah.
That is really good. Because how did you find directing then, actually? Because, like I say, your mouth's covered up. How do you actually convey to actors? Because I've not done it yet. It's about
just
to
with
happen.
The eyes, just
smizing and just the eyes. Yes.
It's definitely weird. Fortunately, you could see obviously you could see the actors' faces, and they put on their masks immediately after a take. But it's just you get used to it. We're incredibly adaptable, as humans, and what you imagine would be impossible actually isn't really that difficult, and you just get used to it and get on with it and make it work, and hopefully the film won't be impacted too much.
But you also did Borat 2 during this time. What's the difference between the two then? Because Borat is a very different movie to Home Alone.
No, I went in and out of Borat, and obviously with Borat, so during the hiatus of Home Alone I work on the Borat movie, and obviously there you're in the real world. In a film set, as I said, you're sort of hermetically sealed. You can be tested 5 times a day. We were lucky because you just make sure that the cast who fly in quarantine for 2 weeks and then are tested beforehand and everything's okay. But when you're dealing with real people, as we were in Borat, that's a very different scenario. And we did a section of filming in Romania that doubles in our movie for Kazakhstan, and that was super weird because I got off the plane in Bucharest and was driven to a sort of industrial park on the outskirts of this ex-Soviet bloc city in a drive-through COVID testing facility. And then, with people in these sort of weird, hazmat suits in an industrial estate, it felt, the closest to an apocalypse that I'd ever experienced. And then was driven to the hotel where the procedures in Bucharest and Romania and the restrictions were far more draconian than they were in Montreal, Los Angeles, or London. And you weren't allowed to travel around in the hotel, and you were temperature checked everywhere. And it was sort of bizarre because we were writing before we were shooting, and even though we were all writing together, we were in different rooms of the hotel, and it was just it was stupid. I might as well have been in London. And then I remember on the first day of shooting, we were waiting for the COVID test for the makeup person to come through. It was supposed to come through at 9:00. We couldn't start until that came through, and just again sat in a car park just waiting on this medical result for 9 hours doing nothing. And then we went through, we lost the lights, and we had basically half an hour's worth of filming. So that was that in that slightly more uncontrolled environment, it had much more of an effect. But hopefully vaccines around the corner are all going to be fine, right?
Yeah, totally. What about you, Ian? Because obviously at the moment you're trying to you're trying to cast a movie right now that's obviously in its latter stages. And how are you finding getting cast at the moment in terms of, has COVID affected that in any way at all?
If anything, it's given me better access to maybe a kind of higher profile talent. So obviously a lot of them are maybe not so busy at the moment, so they're more willing to kind of engage and read scripts, and the agents are more responsive. The tricky part is obviously their availability, because they're probably signed up already. They were probably already shooting something, and they have to wait to see when that goes, because they're contractually obligated to finish that job before they can maybe take on a new job. So it's had its benefits in that sense to be able to get responses and get reads, but it's still tricky now that we've narrowed it down to be able to go, right, this is when we're shooting. Can you give us a yes or no? It's not been ideal. Yeah, that's been my experience so far.
I film in 2 weeks, and there's so many protocols to go through and jump through, and so many locations have, suddenly gone, no, I'm not so sure, or people are staying at home.
That's a good point. Yeah, literally today, for example, we had a location kind of manager out there, and she probably sent us over 20 options. And then we narrowed it down to 5, and then 4 of them are not letting anyone recce. So literally we'd now, narrowed down to 1. And that, again, we need that kind of really remote farmland, kind of quiet area. But because of traveling, et cetera, for cast now, I'm having to kind of explain to the agents and crew, et cetera, that it will be relatively close, so they can, around the M25. I live in London, so they can travel in and out from their home, so they don't have to kind of quarantine in a hotel or be away from their family too much. So again, there's other aspects besides the casting that have obviously had a massive impact for us. So it's just kind of the times that we're in at the moment.
Yeah, I think it is. I think we've all just got to adapt and move forward and go, look, this is how it is until, as Dan says, that vaccine's hopefully around the corner. But at the moment, it's like, well, if you want to make a film, and like say Dan's made 2 during this time, me and you, Ian, we're also making movies and have had movies released during this time. And even though it's frightening, it's like, well, look, if we want to make movies, that's what we've got to do. Embrace it and go, this is what it is. Let's talk a little bit about financing then during this time, because I found, and this is interesting, and Dan, it'd be interesting from your studio side, and Ian from your indie perspective, that investors and studios have sort of gone, well, I'm happy to put money into movies because people are still wanting to see movies. Dan, from your perspective straight away, have you found that to be the case? Has it carried on as normal? Has there been a more increase in money coming your way, or at least fun?
Well, I think you're right. And like more than ever, we need films because we're stuck inside and we're going to watch them. Obviously, there's the whole question of, the future of cinemas versus streaming, which I think is massive. And the effects of this are going to accelerate the death, or certainly the withering of cinemas as people become kind of more used to streaming, and also just as filmmakers, I certainly become more comfortable with the idea of my film being streamed rather than in a cinema, whereas I was very snobby about it even probably a year ago, where I was just like, I don't want it to be streaming, I want it to be in a movie theatre. But now we're just kind of, okay, fair enough, streaming's great, we get many more eyes on it. And then I think certainly at the beginning of this whole period, there was a lot more focus on development that kind of really just accelerated, and lots of people were calling with, have you got any ideas? Can we throw you this? What do you think of this? Because they wanted to stock up on scripts, and because less people were making things, they had more headspace to actually focus on the future and maybe kind of stockpile the cupboard. And also, just from my point of view, selfishly, in terms of, I think what people have started to look more towards is comedy. I think the need for people to just have the stress and strain taken away and just be able to laugh at stuff has come to the fore, and I think there's been a bit of a resurgence in people looking at comedy and fun and lighter stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that
completely.
So
completely.
I've had a great pandemic. I've loved it. I've made 2 films. And,
I don't know if you're allowed to say that, but yeah.
It's long may it rain, long may it continue, right?
Ian, what about your side then, as the financing world, from your perspective, in terms of, has anyone been put off by COVID, or has, I guess from my side, investors have sort of gone, no, I'm fine, I'm still putting the money in, it's a good place to put it at the moment, rather than the house or something else.
Exactly. I think Dan, summed it up. Like, there'll always be a want for stories, and we've consumed an ungodly amount of content, me, my wife, and my children and stuff, whilst lockdown, and the pandemic. So from a indie standpoint, I have a relationship with quite a few high net worths, and they're always very keen to throw money into film. Like, regardless of what's going on, they always. It's the buzz, the excitement of being involved in the film space is always there. So that the conversations I'm having with the kind of distribution, sales agents, etc., they're still very much interested in content. Absolutely. I don't know how much money they've got available, whether they are more risk averse at the moment, rightfully so. Maybe cash flow is an issue at the moment, but on the flip side, they have been going straight to streamers and probably making more money. So it's hard to gauge right now, in my experience. But what I can say, and being a financier myself, like, it's not stopped me. I'm still very much interested in putting money into projects. From a development standpoint as well, it's been incredible for us. Like, we've been incredibly busy, and we're financing all that development ourselves as well. So. And I know there's other partners out there that are looking to get into this space. So it's still very attractive.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've got a question here from Gregory Carter. And obviously you mentioned this anyway, Dan, but he's asking what your thoughts on Borat 2 premiering worldwide on Amazon SVOD as opposed to traditional theatrical first. What do you feel the positives and potential negatives of this approach?
Well, I think it was a very unique experience where we were keen to get the movie out before the election. And that sort of trumped everything. And it was originally meant to be a theatrical release, but obviously with the world the way it was, that wasn't feasible in terms of getting as many people to watch it as possible before the election. So it kind of circumstances just made the decision for us. Essentially, and I think it's paid dividends. It's already the second most streamed movie of the year.
Amazing, well done.
A phenomenal amount of people have seen it. They think something like sort of, in fact, I can't remember the number, but millions and millions of households. Mm-hmm. So I think it was a no-brainer, and it's been very successful. And I think it made such a splash and such an imprint, and broke through in a way that I wouldn't necessarily have forecast in terms of streaming movies. So I think we were pretty lucky.
What I noticed down with it was, I thought the marketing as well was genius and way ahead of its time. Than the kind of traditional sense of getting films out there. You guys. You had influencers, you did kind of viral videos, comedic videos where, Borat crashes into I think it's a Tesla door or something. Like, it just went viral. And again, it's like you guys knew your target audience and you went direct to them without kind of going all different ways, throwing kind of spray and pray money or whatever at certain campaigns. It became an event.
Sacha's a genius at that sort of stuff, and he breaks through. And I think the timing again played into all that in terms of it being relevant to the election that everybody was talking about, but also it feeling like a slight light relief from that, and there's a slightly different point of view on it. When everybody was so depressed about what was going on, it was quite nice to be able to laugh at that. So we always have the philosophy that if you can make the front page, which we've done since the times of Ali G, then you're onto a winner. If you become a news story, if you're part of the conversation there, then, and very few films make it to that point, then that's when you're really kind of, you're onto a winner and can break through.
Do you think that's useful on every level, from indie film all the way up to, the studio movie as Borat 2, do you think that filmmakers should be thinking about things like, obviously we can't all do what Sacha Baron Cohen does, unfortunately. But do you think that we should be thinking about clever marketing tactics from almost the beginning?
I think it's more to do with just making yourself feel unique and special and different somehow. And if that breaks through, then that's brilliant. But I think, the more, one thing that I've learned, and I haven't learned much, the things that have been most successful that I've done have always tried to break the mold in some way. And anything that feels familiar or like you've seen it before, or a facsimile of something, however good it is, it's much less likely to break through and be successful. So, and that works for the good and the bad in terms of sort of commercial success. I just think pushing things as far as possible and daring to be different is really the answer to making an impact.
I personally think you should be thinking about your marketing even when you're writing the script. Who wants to see this? How can we sell it?
Yeah.
Who cares about this movie? What could we do that's slightly different here to get out in the world? And obviously when you get to the point of actually selling the movie and people eyeballs on it, you might not have the marketing budget to do that. But if you can start putting that in your spend from the beginning, it's there, then you do have much more of a chance.
I think
I would also say it's no coincidence that, lots of the heads of studios now come from a marketing background rather than a creative background, because, that we all know that's what makes a film success. You're selling the image of a film and the potential of a film, and you're just getting people in. And, we've all been fooled by going in and seeing great marketing campaigns and then been disappointed by the movie. But, ultimately that's what, even in terms of wanting to get things made, when you're going out and pitching, people are going to look at the marketing potential of it and how it can break through.
Yeah. On that, Giles, from a kind of maybe a smaller independent point of view, we a television idea, the creator, he kind of went off on his own and spent a couple of thousand kind of pounds and made a teaser for a potential pilot of a TV series. And what we did is we, as a company, we threw probably about £1,000 into kind of social media kind of pushes and Facebook and whatever. And it got over 1 million views, that teaser. So then for me now as the producer pitching that, I'm like, look, this is just off the back of that. That's a big number. That's something that just potentially validates that idea. So, and that's right at the front of the Bible, the treatment, etc. So I would advise that if you got a bit of money.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the fact of actually making movies, because a lot of people who are listening to this, I imagine, going, yeah, this is great, but how do I make my movie? How did you make your movies and how do I make mine? How do we get the funding? How do we get anything in place? So I suppose diving straight in, it does go back to the script and having a great concept. For you, Dan, then obviously your journey is slightly different to mine and Ian's, in terms of you came from TV into suddenly making movies. Do you want to talk to the people listening about how that happened for you and your leap, if you like, from making independent telly to big studio movies?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been incredibly lucky, and the more people I meet and the more people I speak to, there's no real magic bullet for a route in. What I would say is sort of a repeat of what I just said, is like, make sure you stick out. Make sure your head goes above the parapet and you're doing something unique. Don't try and make a thing that's a bit like a thing that you saw because you like that thing, because there's a million other people and it's already been done. So try and do something different. And what we did with, Sacha and I, basically, we've known each other since we were 11. We came up together. We wrote Ali G. Ali G was very successful on TV. Working Title came to us and said, do you want to do a movie? I'd never even contemplated a career in movies before, never seen a script, let alone written one. Got a production assistant at Working Title to précis the Robert McKee book because I didn't want to read the whole thing. So they basically seemed like an effort. So she, basically précised it into like 5 pages. We read it, we set off, we did it. we made some mistakes, but what we had was a kind of, a spirit and a maverick. Then we let really clever people guide us, and we listened to them in terms of the producers at Working Title, who obviously, are brilliant and have made, hundreds of great films. And lo and behold, that then just mushroomed, and I fell in love with making films and went from writing to directing, and have been incredibly lucky to just have 20 odd years where I've pretty much made films. So how do you get it done? I don't know. Without sound like, I don't want to sound arrogant, but like, just be good at what you do, and hopefully that breaks through. Try and do something different. Try and be unique, and hopefully that will break through. I think what's a great resource now that wasn't a resource when I started is doing stuff online, and making something unique and getting a ton of hits on something, or making something viral and breaking through that way. And you can do that with your phone and a thing, and just be creative. Continue to be creative. Just try everything and just get your voice out there, and hopefully, in terms of sort of the meritocracy of it all, you'll be noticed.
I like that. I just wanted to ask you, how many drafts did that first Ali G script go through? How many hoops did you have to sort of jump through? Did you do pitch decks? Did you have to do?
No, I mean, we were really lucky because it was a phenomenon on TV. It was zeitgeisty. It was of the moment. And they wanted to get a film out as quickly as possible. So I didn't even know at that point the misery of development and drafts and redrafts and all that sort of stuff. It was a dream. It was a dream introduction to the world of film that was not at all realistic in terms of subsequently having to do 20 drafts of scripts and, going through development misery with producers and directors and the heads of studio changing and all those sort of things, because we had to back into a date. We probably, started in April one year and had to be out for April the next year. So we just went into it and did it and dove in. And it wasn't the greatest film in the world, Ali G Indahouse, but I watch it now and I go, it's not that much worse than the stuff I write now, having had 20 years of experience. So it's a crazy world where there are no rules. And if there was a way to succeed, then we'd know and we'd do it, and that would be the route. And the crazy thing is, whether you're Aaron Sorkin, Steven Spielberg, or somebody who's got a script in Texas, it's still hard to get a film made. It's we've chosen an idiotic industry to nail our colours to the mast of, because it's really hard to get a film made.
Absolutely right. Ian, what about from your experience then getting your first movies made? Do you want to tell the listeners and viewers how you managed to do that with your first movie?
No worries. So my background is I'm an actor. I went to drama school. And like most actors, you're out of work a lot and you're very frustrated. At the time, I was doing all kinds of jobs to make ends meet. And I did a course. The teacher said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I just want to act." And he said, "Well, put on a show or play or whatever." And I had some savings from personal training. I put on a play, and the play did quite well. And one of my very first PT client, he said, "Look, if you ever want to make the movie version of it, I'll give you a couple of grand, but on one condition, you've got to put some money in." Fast forward 3 months later, I'm on set, literally winging it, not having a clue what I was doing, making a super low budget indie movie. I think we shot it in 14 days, and like 6 months later, I'm in Cannes trying to sell it, trying to flog it. It was surreal. It took me 3 or 4 movies before I actually figured out really kind of what a producer. I'm still learning now, what a producer does. One of my kind of superpowers is I'm very good at knowing what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and getting kind of like-minded, driven people like probably Dan and Sacha had that relationship where you just get stuff done, and I think that's why me and you resonate, Giles, is we don't hang around, we're not waiting for permission. We're just going to do it, and we're not going to go anywhere. Even if we don't make any money, we're in it. This is it now. This is us forever. So you just got to crack on. And, after me thinking it's going to be easy, I wasn't on set as a producer, for 4 years after my first movie. But that's just the way it goes. You just got to keep going and keep going. You have so many kind of downward periods, and then you get that one touch and it just charges your battery again, doesn't it? And then you've got to try again and get that touch again. So yeah, you just got to be tenacious.
I agree. I think you have to have plates spinning. I think when I first started trying to make movies, I only had one project. And I was always relying on someone else, and there was always a problem. It was like hearing it third party, and it just got to me. And when that project fell down, I was crushed. I was devastated, worked on it for so long. So I vowed never to do that again. So now I have at least 10 projects that could, with a bit of work go. 3 or 4 of them are ready to go. Packs done, pitches done, director's vision packs done, everything done. So therefore, when I get the call, it's ready. They are ready. Scripts always could be improved. Something could be improved, but I'm ready. The reason I got my first movie, The Dare, made was because I didn't stop pitching it. Everyone I went to, I was like, let's talk about this movie. Let's see what we can do here. And the interest, it was an elevated horror, so it did help that it had that going for it. But the interest did come. But when it ended up being a studio movie, so my debut movie was a studio movie, and I had to work really hard to get the green light. I was pitching constantly. I was constantly sending updates of how I'm going to do this, why I'm going to do it, who I want. And I think that's what you need. As Ian says, you have to be tenacious. You have to keep going, and you have to believe in yourself that you can do this and you can move forward. Let's talk about funding, because we had a really good question about funding here. How do we get funding? And, especially for indie films, how do we find them? For you, Dan, let's go there from the studio side of it first. Sort of, someone asked a question down here. How did you get funding for Borat? It's Ronya. Hello, Ronya. She asked, how did you get the funding for Borat, from Ronya Mann?
I'm not really very good I'm not really a funding person particularly. I don't know. I don't get involved. I'm much more on the creative side of things than the sort of producing money side of things. What I do know is that the struggle to get films made goes from, low budget indie all the way through. It's never easy to get a film made, and there's a million reasons for people not to make films, and they're always happy to tell you them. To me, more and more now it comes down to casting at the kind of the level I'm making stuff, because if people want to put $30 million into a film, they need to have something to grasp onto, and they don't necessarily trust themselves that the script is enough. So you're very beholden to agents and agencies and maybe prior relationships and that sort of thing in order to get access to actors and get them attached. And that to me is what I find makes a movie go and get greenlit rather than anything else. At kind of at the budget level I tend to make things at. So and that's just a miserable experience, chasing actors, getting them, waiting for them. They've got, anybody who's good has got a million offers. Yeah. And somehow you have to persuade them to make the jump into your loving arms. So that, that to me is my big battle rather than funding, because as I say, it's usually a studio. Usually a studio has, paid me to write the script or has developed a script that they sent me that the money's in place, as long as you can just meet a few criteria.
Do they, obviously in the studio system, are they looking for certain names as well? You go, well, I'd love that person. They go, yeah. Is there that as well to play with?
There's a weird sort of algorithm and formula that they use where I've had it where they send the script that I have round, and the actor that I would like, and the studio will send it to their person in Sweden, Germany, Turkey, Albania, and ask that person to read the script with that talent and put a dollar figure next to how much they think it would take with that person in their territory. And if that adds up, then you're good to go. And if it doesn't, then you're not. And I've also been on the end of just some ludicrous suggestions of people to cast in my romantic comedy or my broad comedy, where you go like, they are the least fun person,
least romantic
history of the world. Yeah, and not romantic, and have never done anything. And they go, yeah, but look at the numbers for what they did on so and so and so and so. And you go, yeah, but that's like an action movie where they pummel people to death. He doesn't have great lightness of touch, this particular person. And they go, but he's looking to do something funny, and you go, not. And he said, and I literally had a few years ago, there's a script that I loved, that I was desperate to make, and it was a really good script. I was really proud of it, and it would have been a great movie. And I was struggling to get, there are sort of 3 people in terms of comedy people who get a film greenlit, and they were all busy forever and couldn't do it for whatever reason. And I had such faith in the script. I got a call one night, and the agent had sent it to this particular action star who wanted to do it, and they just said, "Look, if you do it, it's greenlit. You're done. That's it. You can cast whatever woman you want opposite him, but we've got this guy. You're through. You're done. It's okay." And I was awake all night. It's just like, do I do it? I've spent years of my life on this. It's a real passion project. It'll get made, but then you go, it'll get made and it will be terrible and I'll hate myself for doing it. So you just have to go, not for me. And it's a really difficult choice. You know?
That is a difficult choice. That's the difference between making a movie and not for maybe a year, or going back to another actor and going out again. So does that mean, because of that then, Dan, are you maybe circling 3 projects at the same time? Maybe you've got the first one out to the action show and the comedy, and is that kind of seeing which one goes first?
Yeah, although that's a very tricky balancing act as well, because people know. So, there are 3 big agencies who have most of the actors. There's WME, CAA, UTA. And if they know that you're out on one movie and then go to somebody on another movie, then they go, well, is he serious about this movie? Is he serious about this movie? Because he can't be, because he's calling our clients, calling one of our agents about another client for something else. So how serious is he? So that's a very delicate balance to strike. So it doesn't always work. I mean, I'm lucky insofar as I can write as well as direct. So I've always got something going on. So if I'm not, so I can sort of play a movie out in terms of trying to get it going as a director while I'm writing something else, and that will, immediately then follow. But, there's only so many kicks in the face that you can take. And it's really hard, because there are only a finite amount of actors who, in terms of the things that I write, I write comedies generally and I direct comedies generally. So there's only a finite amount of actors out there who tick the box of A, being funny, B, I like, and C, as kind of financially viable. And so there's only so many times you can knock on the door and say, "Oh, it's Dan Mays with another movie." You go, "Oh, no, not another one."
Another goofy comedy.
Yeah. So you have to be quite discerning in who you go to and when and how.
Right. Okay, that's fascinating. It's a really fascinating insight. Thank you for that. What about yourself then, Ian? Are you juggling quite a few projects at the same time?
Oh, yeah. So we've got, I think, 10 films in development. And like anything, one kind of catches fire and then you kind of do your best to kind of grow that flame. And, realistically, I'd like to think that we've probably got 3 films that will go next year. But you never know, right? So, and we've just started to kind of branch into telly as well. So I try to diversify as much as I can. Otherwise, you're hanging around, you're constantly waiting. You can wait months before, even if it's an offer, months before an agent responds with that talent. Doesn't mean that it's not necessarily a no. Sometimes they will get back to you if you're tenacious enough. But yeah, you've got to be busy, man. Otherwise, I just go insane, man. I just jump off a bridge. I need to be busy.
Well, this is it. We're all creative, right? That's what we like to do. And I imagine everyone here listening is the same, watching. We've got a really interesting question here from Christopher McMillan. He said, "Hi, gentlemen. We completed a feature film. How do we use that film to raise funds for our second? Where should we focus our energy right now?" Ian, let's start with you.
So obviously, you hope that first film has had any kind of success, not necessarily financially, but maybe it's gone to a festival, or it's it's had some kind of good exposure. You can leverage that. I mean, not all investors sounds daft saying it, but not all of them are that bothered about financial returns. Sometimes they just want to walk down a red carpet or whatever, or meet an actor. So you just got to think out the box a little bit, But look, huge congratulations for making your first movie. You're already a massive step ahead than most. So, take confidence from that. And yeah, if you are, depending on the genre, depending on what the actual project is, like, I don't know, maybe you have to think out the box, maybe you can't raise as much development finance for it. And you work on maybe you ask the talent, the writer or whoever you're working with to maybe work on a kind of split deferment or whatnot. So, but you've made a movie, so someone out there, again, If you work hard enough, I'm sure you'll find someone that'll give you some funds.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it is about the hard work, and well done for making your first feature. Amazing. Even if you made it for nothing, so what? Well, I found the reason why people wouldn't let me make my first film was because I hadn't made a movie. I was a stumbling block all the time. Didn't matter if I'd written it and they loved the script, they'd always fall down to the point of, yeah, but you haven't made a movie yet. So my advice anyway is go make a movie. Even if it's on your iPhone, and it doesn't have to win loads of awards. It doesn't have to make a load of money. You've then made something which really helps and makes investors and someone like Ian and Dan go, oh, okay, well, you've actually been through the trenches. You know how hard it is. Fine. Let's see what you could do with maybe a little bit more, or at least they'll take you seriously to go, all right, let's have a meeting. And that's where you need to be. You need to get in the room. But I think one of the main questions that most people are asking is, how do you find those investors? How do you find those HNIs? Or let's talk about that, Ian, first. With you. Where do you find your financiers? Where are they? And of course, you don't give away your secrets. Why would?
No. I mean, look. I mean, I am an actor. I'm very creative, I'd like to think, but I do actually really enjoy the business side of it too. That's probably why I'm involved in quite a few different kind of companies in that sense. So I really get a kick out of that. So because, I read an ungodly amount of kind of finance books and don't know why. I didn't get any GCSEs or any qualifications in that sense, but I'm really interested in building stuff, building companies or scripts or projects. So, and then once you kind of learn the language of money and finance, you start to kind of go to events where other financiers are there or other people are like-minded. And then as soon as I say, I'm a film producer or an actor or whatever, straight away, someone goes, oh, that's interesting. I know, or my friend does that, or my brother's doing that or whatever. So you've just got to expand your relationship and your networks. I can't tell you how many night courses, things I've done on finance and whatnot. And, like I say, I'm interested in property, for example. I do these events where I go and I talk and I, meet other people in the room. And what I always do is, and this has served me so well, is I always tell people, regardless of what, industry they're in, I'm in the movie business. You just never know who that person is that you're speaking to. Like I say, I was a personal trainer and my client, I didn't say, oh, I'm not an actor. I made it clear, I'm an actor, but I also personal train. And he had an interest in, he's a high net worth. And yeah, so you've just got to kind of think out the box and just own it in a way. But they're out there. They're absolutely out there. There's so much money. I mean, the Fed are just printing money. So, it's not hard. That's wrong. It is hard.
It's very hard, but I know what you mean. It's not hard if you're in the right places. And like Ian says, you're like I was pitching it or talking about, this is what I'm doing. Are you interested? And the fact that you're talking about something that you're passionate about instantly makes people attractive to you. And they go, oh, well, tell me about that. They might not have money, but they might know someone who does. Yeah. And I've always found when I've met a HNI, a high net worth individual, I'll never ask them personally for money. I'll never say, hey, you should invest in my film. No. I word it, hey, you might know someone who might be interested in the film. It takes the pressure off them, but also they then feel like, oh yeah, I might be able to find someone. And then if their friend gets involved, they then feel like they should as well. It's kind of win-win for you. But as Ian says, you can find these people that just got to keep looking. Could be anyone. Could be a dentist.
I mean, the AFM, I'm sure these networks.
AFM, there's loads. Yeah.
These are perfect examples of that. There are finances, there are companies out there. And again, it's my job as the producer to know these guys. So if you are more a creative writer, director, let me do that work for you. You concentrate on what the most important thing is, which is the script, the creative, and let me do all that. So make sure you've partnered up with, producers if you can, or someone else that's going to help you. Don't try and do it alone,
Great. We've got loads of questions from you guys. Thank you so much. And we're going to get to them, I think, in about 15 minutes, and maybe we'll jump to a few in between that. Dan, I wanted to talk to you about the director-producer relationship, because you do both and you're the screenwriter. Yeah. How does it work when you're directing and now you have a new producer coming in that's not to you? How does that relationship work? And then the other way around when you're producing and working with directors, and have you learnt massively from that?
I mean, there's all sorts of different types of producers, as you know. There are the financial guys who worry about all the money and kind of don't really have a creative input, and then there are the creative people. And where I am now, generally, it's I will have a creative partner as a producer from the get-go who will come to me with the script and interview me and choose me as a director, and make sure that I'm kind of aligned with them creatively in terms of our vision for the film. And that's a really important relationship, because as a director, you're essentially employed by them, and you kind of have to remember that, and they're giving you tens of millions of dollars to do something, so you have to be responsible with that. But at the same time, you have to make sure that you're not going to clash and have creative differences. So at its best, they basically kind of have a sort of 40,000 foot view and step in when they think things are going wrong. And often they're essentially your conduit with the studio. So they're there to make sure that you're protected from the studio and the studio is protected from you. And they sort of go in between and decipher the messages and protect you when things are going wrong, or champion you when things are going well. It's a really important relationship, and you have to find the right person. And generally, I've been pretty lucky. I've had one experience with a producer who I didn't like, but that's over, kind of however many films I've made, which is a lot. So it's a pretty, rare occurrence. Mm-hmm. And, I try and be respectful, because I'm sort of playing with their money. From the other point of view, I don't really, like I said, I'm not really a sort of a producer. I'm sort of there as a kind of writer who stands around and pitches ideas and it sort of collaborates with a director more than anything. So I didn't direct the new Borat movie. The guy who did was brilliant, and I just loved sitting there and suggesting ideas and never being too kind of dictatorial, because being at the other side of it and being aware of how annoying producers can be, they're like, hold on, I'm a director, this is my movie. I try and be respectful of the director and just be there to help whenever I can and pitch ideas and be a creative ally.
Is there an area that you feel that, not from your side, but just generally, that we all could improve, the director-producer relationship and being on set and working? Is there something that, what's the thing that works for you? Why has it worked for you? You've only had one bad experience. What do you think we could do to improve to help that, or newcomers and stuff?
I think as with most things in the filmmaking, it's about ego. And I think, as a director, it's very easy to get high on your own supply and just think you are the god because everyone's so nice to you and you don't have to listen to anyone, and don't look over my shoulder because I know what's going on here. But, my attitude to filmmaking generally is surround yourself with brilliant people, let them be brilliant, and you kind of steer the ship effectively. So if you've got a brilliant DP and a brilliant designer and a brilliant casting director, et cetera, then, just don't be too controlling and let them do their thing, because you've employed them, and let them, and let them spread their wings, as opposed to being egotistical. And I think it's exactly the same with the producer. And I think if you all have the same goal, you want to make a really good movie. Like, he's not trying to sabotage your movie and make it unsuccessful. He's trying to do the best for it, and he wants it to be as successful as you do. So bear that in mind, and just have an open dialogue, and don't be defensive, don't be egotistical, and try and be as collaborative as possible. And hopefully, you just have to hope they're not an idiot.
We always got to hope that, right?
Yeah, I've had one idiot who was an idiot, and it was annoying. And my philosophy as well generally is like, it's best not to be the smartest person in the room. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. I want to surround myself with people who are much cleverer than me, who've been through it all. So when I'm making a movie with Eric Fellner and Tim Bevan at Working Title, they are brilliant. They've done hundreds of movies, most of which have been really good. So that's fantastic. You know who you're getting into bed with. Home Alone, the two producers, brilliant. Hutch Parker, who used to run Fox, Dan Wilson, who was sort of underneath him, both brilliant, insightful, have done it a million times, have a great outlook on anything, and I'm very lucky to have them. So I just think at the beginning, just be very careful about who you're getting into bed with.
What a wonderful advice, Ian. And what about yourself? Because you've not directed yet, but in terms of the producing side and your relationship with the directors, all the movies you've produced, is there anything that people could take from that? Any advice or anything?
I just echo exactly what Dan just said. Check ego at the door, and go into a movie with humility, and we're all on the same page. And communication is everything. The only time it's ever gone wrong is when I've had one experience myself where the director just changed, from pre-production. Once we went to principal photography, he didn't want to know us. He didn't want to talk to us. And that's not why we make films, right? So, and I don't think that guy's ever made a movie since. So you just can't work that way. It's a creative process. And my job is to protect, the talent and let them do their job to the best of their ability. But then if, the best experiences I've had when I'm speaking to the director and they listen to what I'm saying, it's not rocket science, but you'd be amazed on sometimes how often that happens where they don't. It is particularly maybe newer talent coming through, making their first or second film or whatever. You've got to surround yourself with experience. Even me, I'm trying to make movies now at Dan's level, and there's no way I'm going to go into those films without having someone, that's got 10 of those, as an exec or whatever. I always want to be, even if I never ever see them on set or whatever, they're just on the phone. That's good enough for me. That'll make me sleep at night, because it's such a huge amount of money. I don't want to fuck it up,
Yeah, because you're right. Because the ego says, this is my film. I want to do this myself. I want to make it mine. But that's incredibly short-sighted, I think, for all of us. You want to, as long as you're all pulling in the same direction as you, and you are, surround yourself with. That's my biggest advice for filming or for any aspect. Just surround yourself with the best people you can.
And I know that's not easy. We know that's really difficult. And you're going, well, how do I do that? But by going to events, by coming to AFM, you're going to meet people here. They take their business cards as, metaphorically now, just, take their emails and write to them. I've met some amazing people from my time at Cannes or AFM, and now it's online. So you can see people's faces and profiles. You can look them up before you even say hello. And you should definitely do that. The opportunities now are massive for you. The fact that you're here is huge. And don't ever underestimate your ability to do that and to speak to people and be proud of what you're doing and want to achieve. But let's jump in with a few questions and see what happens. RK Musgrave asks, is a pitch deck and teaser trailer enough to approach distributors and sales agents for pre-sales, etc.?
My short answer is yes and no. It all depends on the actual project itself. Ideally, you'd want a script. I think that's fundamental. But at the same time, you might not have the funds to be able to get the writer going. So it all depends on the project itself, if I'm honest.
I agree. I think with sales agents, anything with pre-sales, they're just going to ask who's in it. I mean, that's your first thing. They're going to say, cool, who's in it? I don't care what it looks like. Of course, you're going to make it look like all these movies you've put in the pictures. You've made it look like Blade Runner. Yeah. Like, well, how much budget have you got to make it look like that? So
exactly,
you can take all that with a pinch of salt, I think, a little bit. And I certainly make sure with my pitch decks and all my directors' vision boards, and when I often do videos as well now, so I pitch it to them. That way they can get to know me and they see hopefully my passion behind it. But I make sure that is in relation to what I can actually make for the budget we're asking for. I won't put pictures of Blade Runner 2020 in, for example, if I am making a sci-fi, because that your investors and your producers might think, oh, he's going to make me that for that budget. And actually it's really difficult, to do that. So I think just think about it. But I think the answer is there. Maybe you might get in the room with it, but they're just going to ask who's your star cast. Maybe your pitch deck will help get those potentially. So great. We've got another one here. This is from Ileana Vasquez. I hope I pronounced that correctly for you. How are sales agents deriving pre-sales at the moment? It doesn't seem realistic. Ian, that's one for you.
Yeah, good question. You know what? If I'm honest, as a financier, I take pre-sales with somewhat of a pinch of salt, because most of the time they never really ever hit those numbers anyway. So I'm not saying they go like this, because the best sales agents are mostly accurate. So they have relationships, don't they, with buyers all around the world. They just come up with a number, they look at comparables, etc. But as a financier, I look at maybe 20% of the actual takes, and then that gives me a level of comfort. I don't know if I answered the question there, but that's mine.
No, I think so. I think the same, mate. I think it's take it all with a pinch of salt, and you go with the best options you can, and just go with the most information.
And just on that, make sure as well, producers out there, like you don't just go with the sales agent that gives you the best takes, because they can just literally just bump it up. Like make sure you do your research, do your due diligence, like ask other people that have had films with them or whatnot. So that's super important. Yeah, that's just another little thing.
That's great. We got from Till Schmeierbeck, I really hope I pronounced that till correctly. Dan, he's asking you, how many people read the script before a studio gives the green light? We kind of touched on this before. And how does the development look like with a studio movie? So I suppose we could jump on a project that maybe you haven't released yet. Like you say, the project that you've written, the studios ask you to write. How many times does that go through a process? How long can that take?
There are so many different variables, and I think it's sort of similar to the answer you just gave. You know, if I have a script with Chris Hemsworth attached, then they might not.
Which is nice.
You know what I mean? They might not even read it. They'll just go, "Yes, great, done."
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We make it. Let's get going. And if you don't, then it's so much talent related. And what you can do is you can get a studio really behind a good script. If your script is great, then they can go all guns blazing and go after talent and be prepared to, say, we want Chris Hemsworth in it, and we're looking at that budget level. But then as soon as you get a no or a pass from an actor, then the air goes out of the balloon. So in terms of a studio, there's usually the executive you're dealing with, then the head of the studio. It's there's few layers. I don't have to go through a million layers when I'm, writing a script or pitching something. Certainly where I am now, luckily enough. So, and I haven't ever really had to do that. So with a studio movie, once you've been asked to write the script, it's pretty simple in terms of either they like it or they don't like it. And there are sort of two real arbiters of that, the head of the studio and your particular executive.
How many notes do they give you? Do they give you quite a lot of extensive notes? Or is it?
Well, generally what will happen is the producer will give you a lot of notes. So,
right.
Yeah. So, your production company who have the property or the idea or who you've pitched it to originally and they, and taken on board as producer, what they'll do is they'll before it gets to the studio, they'll give you a ton of notes and try and shepherd it in the way that you want to. And sometimes you'll agree with them and sometimes you won't. And sometimes that can get a bit fruity because they're second guessing what they think the studio might like. But then once it gets to the studio, they're not lazy, but what I'm saying is that they're not that interested in development. Either they like something or they don't. And if it's close, then they'll give you the right amount of notes. And if it's not close and they think it needs a million notes, then they'll probably just go, you know what, this isn't for us, this hasn't worked out, and they'll move on. They won't generally flog your script until it's a dead horse. And they'll just go, it's not working. We'll move on.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think that's something that frightens new writers or frightens people who are just stepping into that studio system, like Ian and myself. And that feeling of, oh gosh, how many times are they going to read this script? You spent ages, they like it, you go in again after your first round of notes and you think, this is my chance. If they don't like this version, they're never going to read it again. How many times do you think, in your professional opinion, and you from being from the other side, obviously getting scripts to read, how many times do studio execs or producers actually sit and read your new drafts and new drafts?
Look, again, it depends how good or bad it is. Like I've had the first thing I ever did in Hollywood. I sold a script with Jack Black attached, and it was a big deal. It was a 2-picture deal. This was the second script I'd ever written. I wrote it. They hated it. It was dead. That was it. First time. That was it. Simple as that. And they paid me my money. It was great, fantastic, but no interest, just immediately withered on the vine. And that was with Disney at the time. So, that's right. They just didn't like it. So they just, it's such a hard amount of work. So they read it once, frankly, maybe not even once. I had an amazing, if I may tell a quick story, I had an amazing meeting with the head of the studio. Like I said, it was my first ever thing. Put my heart and soul into it. They flew me over to LA from London to have a meeting with the head of the studio. I arrived on the Monday. They put me off. Eventually Friday came around. I had to fly back on the Saturday for whatever. So they managed to fit me in. I had lunch. I sit down for lunch with the head of the studio. She says, I love the script. It's amazing. I love it. I think it's great. Fantastic. Oh, that's brilliant. What do you think about the thing that happens in the end of Act 2? Can't remember what it was. She goes, I'm not so worried about that. But like on page 4, this thing happens. And I think we might be able to think about something like that. And then I'd asked lots of questions, and it became immediately apparent that she'd read probably 7 pages in the way to lunch. And bear in mind, this was like I said, quite a big deal at the time with Jack Black attached and And she'd read 7 pages. She'd probably got coverage from a junior executive there who just said, it's not that good. And so she probably didn't even read it once and put the knife into it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that story. Right. We've got just over 6 minutes. So let's rattle through a few more of these questions and see if we can get some answers out for everyone. Nina Martinek asks, can you please talk more about attaching talent and the effective ways to get the script to the actor? There seems to be a lot of gatekeepers. Yes, there is. Ian, quickly on that one.
Yeah, you've got to get to know those gatekeepers, you know. You've got to be so good they can't ignore you. Just keep on them. Like, if they're not taking your calls, the agents, you know, if they're not getting back to you, just keep going and keep going and keep going. And at the same time, try and, if you need to, try and, partner up with someone that's maybe got a bit more experience that has those relationships. It's not easy. I mean, I had a conversation with, I won't mention his name, but he's one of the biggest producers on the planet. And he still, you know, has that situation where sometimes it's just hard, you know. Ultimately, then when you do get through, because eventually you will, you've got to make sure your script is on it. You know, it's as simple as that. You know, you, like what these guys have said, you probably get one shot them reading it.
You get one shot of the first 10 pages. Frankly.
Yeah,
or 7 in your case.
That's a big advice. Make the first 10 pages really, really good.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Great. Very true. Shirley Trigger asks, Ian Sharp, may I have your contact to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm not going to put my email on here right now, but like, I'm very easy to find.
And this is something I found as well. Look, all the talks you're going to while you're here, a lot of the speakers, you can find them on Twitter online. You can find us on Twitter, not Dan, but you can find us. And if you do want to get in touch, do get in touch that way. And the same with everyone else. Do your research and write a nice letter about something you've seen of Ian's or whatever, and he will get back to you. Curtis Shaw, what do you think is the most difficult part of movie making? Finding funding, unique stories, or distribution? Dan?
You know, it all comes down to the creative, I think, because it depends what kind of film you want to make. You know, try and be different, try and be brilliant, get your script to be the best it can possibly be, and and attach the best talent you can to it. So I think it all has to come down to the creative. And I think if something is brilliant, then it will find its way to funding and then distribution. So it's unique stories with unique voices, and brilliantly executed and thought through, and diligence and imagination. So I think that to me is always has to be the key.
Love it. Yeah, I'm the same. I think scripting, we can all find really good scripts, or we can find script writers if we're not them ourselves. Funding can be really difficult, but distribution too. But it's a melee. Sean Donnelly asks, has it been hard getting insurance or a completion bond during COVID? And my answer then, as I'm about to go into production, has been no. But obviously it's a different situation now, and COVID insurance changes things. People over 70 is an issue. You have to be tested every 5 days, and there's so much things to jump through. And on set, like Dan mentioned at the very beginning, goes into little pods, so everything changes. So you can be insured, but there's certain restrictions. Anyone else to add to that?
Just on your budget, just probably have an extra 10% for COVID
Correct.
proof or whatever, maybe have that in mind.
Joe Solomon, Giles, how did you get help to ensure your pitch deck was ready when you took it out to meetings? I didn't. I just knew what, and to be honest, so many people had sent me pitch decks over the years as well, and I'd learned and got better. So I made them look like the film would look. I made them glossy. I made them interesting. I made someone actually want to look at it. And I'd really researched, so it wasn't too long and boring. A lot about, a bit about me, a lot about the films it was related to. And I'd send it out to someone like Ian and go, Ian, what do you think? And he'd go, that bit's boring. I'll get rid of that. Oh, that's too much. And I think you only know when you go into meetings and they look at it, or they skim through it, or they actually sit and spend time. So just keep working on it and pass it to as many friends and people in the industry as you can. Don't be shy about doing that. Sorry, we're going so quick at the end, but we've got 2 minutes. Let's see how many we can get through. Nino Dat, how do you find a good creative producer for your project? Where do you look, Ian?
AFM, join Sanando, IMDb Pro. There's a ton of resources available to you. So you just have to get out there and network.
Amazing. I'd love to do so many questions. Obviously, we've got a question here about Maria Bakalova, who I know as well, as Dan knows, obviously, from Borat 2. But there's so many questions. And actually, we should probably wrap up and let everyone know where they can find us. And maybe we'll squeeze one in. Obviously, we run the Filmmakers Podcast, myself and Ian Sharp. If you do want to hear more about us talking to amazing guests like Dan Mazur, then do find us, thefilmmakerspodcast.com. And you can find us anywhere you find your podcasts. Ian Sharp is obviously a prolific producer, and you can find him online to do that too. And Dan Mazur has, obviously, Borat 2 is out now. Do go see that. But Home Alone, Dan, do you know when it might be?
It'll be next Christmas. It's a Christmas.
Next Christmas. Amazing. That is incredible. All the questions have just disappeared now, so I can't see them anymore. But thank you so much. We're going to have another minute. They've gone. It's fine. They've taken away from us.
The sales now. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Let's talk about sales. Let's talk about that. Final tips and tricks, Dan, from you. What I know you gave an amazing one earlier, but is there anything else you can give to people?
I just think keep creating, keep going, keep producing stuff, keep writing, keep finding people. I think tenacity is absolutely key. And if you've got the combination of tenacity and talent, then you've got a good chance.
Amazing. Ian, a final little wrap up from you.
Exactly. Just never give in. Never give in.
Absolutely. I'm the same. Keep going. Make your projects happen. You can do it. Believe in yourself. And if you're lucky enough to ride the elevator up to the top, it's your absolute mission to let everyone else know as well, and let your films happen and make them happen. You can do it. Believe in yourself. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much, AFM, for having the Filmmakers Podcast do this chat. Thank you, Dan Mazur.
Thank you.